I'm Candler Bud,
And I'm Back to the Future Part 2.
and this is Grab the Remote. And it is a Back to the Future 2 centric episode, but it's going to be a little hard to talk about Back to the Future 2 without talking about 3 and 1, especially 3, since I feel like they're kind of the same movie. As you know, Brian, they were shot at the same time. It's been, as you said in a previous episode, a long 4 years, because this is pre-internet. We're not reading about films months ahead. It's old school in 1989. I see the poster for Back to the Future 2 a few months before, maybe the summer before. I'm pumped. And here we are, it's fall, and I'm seeing Back to the Future 2.
That's the time period. You see the poster, and away we go. So I see the teaser poster, November 1989. I should have brought it out. I have a poster for Back to the Future Part 2. This is the dork part, all right? So let's just say it was the 80s, the late 80s. But I was in the Back to the Future fan club, for Pete's sake. I would get newsletters and little items and keepsakes. You know, of course they want to buy all kinds of stuff. So this could have been more in my wheelhouse. And we both talked about it. This is the point where we say, if you haven't watched part 1, Back to the Future, our episode, go watch that first. But I was really looking forward to it. Now, because of that, there are expectations, and sometimes those expectations are not met.
That is true.
So for me, it's I think this is the best part about this show for me. I have no idea what Candler's going to say. We have not talked about Back to the Future other than let's do a Back to the Future show, and now we're going to do part 2. We both have thoughts, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts on. And I'm going to tell you a few things that I've been thinking about. The best part about it is it's a pretty strong fan base. The BTTF fan base is very strong, but I don't think.
Whoa. I'm sorry. Did you just do an acronym?
I did. GTR, BTTF, all those things, right?
I think you're coming around to the acronyms.
Coming around.
Nice. Okay.
As long as people know what the acronyms are, right? Kind of like SCUBA, right? If you don't know that SCUBA is an acronym, don't say SCUBA.
What does it stand for?
Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus.
Nice. I had no idea I never thought of that.
So it's a lot of those little things. So anyway, I think most of my friends like Back to the Future Part 2. The people I talk to about movies, they love Part 2, and I'm always the outlier. Like, I don't know.
Did you feel that way in whatever grade you are, 10th grade, 9th grade?
Give or take. Yeah, I was disappointed immediately, and now we finally, after all these years, we get to chat about it. It's been a long time, right? Good grief.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I had no idea that was one of the reasons why we didn't get a Back to the Future sooner. So maybe there's an alternate universe somewhere where Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which quite frankly, I find that film forgettable. And then we had Back to the Future 2 sooner, and maybe we could have had the great Crispin Glover and the great Claudia Wells, who both sadly for different reasons were not a part of the sequels.
Great points. Christopher Lloyd also appeared in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, if I'm not mistaken. And the late Bob Hoskins, the late great. The Crispin Glover story has gotten traction through the years. You know, there's all these different stories. And, of course, I thought Claudia Wells was wonderful, and I'm miss seeing her. Instead, we get Elizabeth Shue, who does a fine job. But it's always, anytime an actor is replaced, there's always an adjustment for me.
It takes you out of it.
The Crispin thing to me is the one that is the most difficult to overcome. If George McFly is with us as a character, the script is completely different. They have so many new and different places to go. I think it's a funnier, better script. Instead, he's dead. I mean, he's a gravestone for most of this. And so
or he's upside down.
Right. Played by another actor, you know. So
on the golf course. Well, you're right. You're right. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. Those, and you know. So for me, I always said that George McFly could have been an integral part. He would have, and I love the idea of him understanding that Marty's traveling through time. I would love to see George McFly in a different time period. To me, that character could exist in a movie by himself about time travel, and that is I'm going to bring up a point about the other characters that maybe we can talk to. I find that a lot of these characters in 2 are really cartoon cutouts. The Marty Jr. and Marlene, played by Michael J. Fox, Griff, the grandson of Biff.
Well, since when did you become the physical type?
and
How was that? Was that bad?
No, that was excellent. The Marty Jr. and the Marlene piece also brings in the digital compositing, which is, I think, ILM did. I mean, that was the groundbreaking special effects. A lot of phenomenal. There's my word. I said it. Ding. I'm going to stop saying phenomenal. Great special effects for the time, and that kind of ushered in what we saw Eddie Murphy do with the Nutty Professor, all the different characters. But I found, to me, Marty Jr. Was just he was a dullard. I mean, something was wrong with poor Marty Jr. Like, he needed help, and I think they like the whole thing about him going to jail because of his involvement in Griff's gang is pretty darn heavy. And then Marlene breaks him out of prison, or tries to break him out of prison. That all rang very hollow for me when I was like, wait a minute, she tries to break him out. That Marlene, I don't know.
Now, why do you think it worked better for Eddie Murphy's Nutty Professor than it did in Back to the Future 2? You know, they're having the same actor playing several characters. And I'll go ahead and answer my own question, is because in the previous film, Marty didn't travel back to 1955, and he didn't look exactly like his parents. And I kind of get why they thought this was a good idea. One, Michael J. Fox is an even bigger star. This is the sequel. Let's have more Michael J. Fox.
He's great.
I get that. He's awesome. He's awesome, right? In those 4 years, from 85 to 89, even though it's the same filmmakers, it's still Bob Gale, it's still Robert Zemeckis, but the sequels feel so different than the original. I wish they would have been a little more subtle like they were in the original.
Agreed. I also, again, it's very easy to poke holes, and I'm not trying to poke holes, but I will say that Marty 2015, old Marty, so he's really about our age now, right? So I am interested in him as a character because really he is unsympathetic. I mean, he is somebody who feels sorry for himself. He never gets over the being called a chicken. Like, even after the accident, 30 years later, that is his biggest Achilles heel. And this is a guy who 30 years ago, his life was changed by traveling back in time to save his parents. I'm not connected at all with any of the future characters. And he reminds me a little bit of Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. It's the idea that you have Marty, the young 17-year-old, our hero, and then we see him again, and he is nothing like he was. I mean, obviously things have happened to him. I understand that his hand is mangled and he can't play. You know, his passion has been taken away. So anyway, that was kind of a new thought for me. I don't know if that's been said anywhere. I'm sure it has, because a billion people think about this stuff a lot. So I don't know. It just, for me, there was a few things like, does he remember that Doc? I mean, since it's all happening, this is kind of that future technical mumbo jumbo. But does he understand that his past self is going to come and be around and be doing things? Is that in his memory bank? When does that happen? I don't know. Those are the things that'll make your blood vessels pop, I guess. Future
Marty should have totally been in league with Doc Brown in the future.
Completely.
It really, and his storyline. It's just, he's kind of there. We're kind of it's like we're seeing him through the view of Jennifer in a closet, and then we kind of hear about this conversation, but you're distracted by all the future stuff, and there's no payoff for that scene until the next movie at the end. I remember the first time I saw 3, I was like, wait, what are they? Oh, yeah, there's that conversation.
It erased.
Yeah, It Erased, yes. By
Needles, played by Flea. So because the movie has to happen, we have to have things go haywire. But The Karate Kid, that movie is 20 minutes long when they call the cops because Daniel is getting brutalized. The cops pull up to the dojo, and then the movie's over, and the credits roll, and we hear the pan flute play. With this, we have to have all these things happen when really he could go back a little bit sooner and have some sort of intervention with Doofus Marty Jr. about the slings and arrows with hanging out with Griff and his horrible gang of techno robots. So they all have like bionic implants or something, something so bizarre. So instead, it's like Marty has to be his doofus kid's doppelganger. Anyway, and leaving the Gray's Sports Almanac behind, and just all the things with Jennifer, like having Jennifer there passed out, like giving her zapping her so she's passed out, the cops having to take her home. All those little things have to happen so we can get to part 3. And really, the only thing we need from part 2 that goes to part 3, if I'm not mistaken, is the hoverboard. If we have the pink hoverboard, and I love part 3, and I can't wait to talk about it. If we have the pink hoverboard, then that's all we need, because that's what Doc needs to save Clara. Spoiler alert. So I want you to tell me a little bit about how you feel about how the story gets going, because obviously Doc has to get Marty to save his kids.
Yeah. So we go back to the end of part 1, and Doc Brown says, "No, you and Jennifer both turn out fine. It's your kids, Marty. Something's got to be done about your kids."
Not true, by the way. Not true.
Not true. Exactly.
Marty's not fine. I apologize for interrupting, but so is that, to me, that's a screenwriter's dream ending of part 1. So not thinking about a sequel, you and Jennifer turn out fine, but actually no, you have a bad car wreck today or tomorrow, right?
Yeah, yeah.
In the grand scheme of it, your musical career ends, and a few other things happen. So yeah, continue, please.
And then so they have to reshoot that scene, obviously, because they have the different Jennifer, and Doc does a sort of a different look for. No, you and Jennifer both turn out fine. So we jump into the DeLorean, and it's funny. There's the opening credits going through the clouds to kind of separate, but when they're in the car, they're just rehashing the previous scene. Doc has already told them it's a time machine. It already flies, and then they're just rehashing the entire thing, and then they need an excuse for Jennifer to get out of there. I wonder. The Claudia Wells in Back to the Future 1, and it's her acting, but it's also the way she was written. I don't get a sense that character would have been be in a flying car, and all she wants to talk about is the future possible wedding of her high school boyfriend.
Totally. So, and that actually sets up something funny. I think you're right about that, but the I get married at the chapel.
Love. Yeah.
The chapel. Oh, love. So there's something to that. I wanted to see that picture up close, because like Marty's like in white jeans, like he's in white and like almost a tuxedo shirt.
Yeah, he's a tuxedo T-shirt. Yeah, I believe so.
So yeah, to me there is something to be said for it. It's the same with Biff 85, chased Biff 85. Where he comes out to show Marty his business cards, and he sees the flying DeLorean. There's really nothing about that until it comes back around where he sees it again. And Biff is one of those characters. Excuse me, I just went through puberty. Biff is one of those characters where he's all over the place. He has the kowtowed, more effete Biff that is doing his car detailing, and then you have the gruff
and flamboyant.
Yeah.
Hey, look at your new buck.
Yeah. I mean, so he goes all over the place. And even, Biff 2015 in the Cafe 80s he's back to his old self again.
Sure.
So I don't know the consistency there with and it just becomes so there's a cartoon element to it. I think that makes it somewhat fun. Cafe 80s,
which wasn't in 85.
No, you're right. It's comedy. It's a fun movie, but there's not the cartoon piece.
But again, this is the same producer, same director, same writer, and it's funny how different it looks.
Correct. You have a young Elijah Wood at the video game.
Yeah.
That's a nice little cameo for the Frodo fans. If I'm thinking about the things that are fun, I failed to mention. I had a pair of Nike Burt Bruins, because Marty McFly had a pair of Nike Burt Bruins. Those are those standard Nikes with, he had the red swoosh. I had the black swoosh. And I love those shoes. And then, he replaces them with Air Mags. Those are called Air Mags. There's been, if you look up Air Mags, they've made those. There's been some great charity, some people who, you put money to it and get those things. Those are some sweet shoes. I love those shoes in '89 when that came out. There was some fun things about, again, it's a total bummer just to kind of poke holes through the movie. There are things that I do like about it.
Yeah, there are things I do like about it too. I like the fact that we jump right into the action.
Yeah.
So we're flying through Hill Valley, and I love the shot, the special effects shot of when that's our exit, and then he pulls off, and then you see the floating sign with like the Kiwanis. That to me, for some reason, is so realistic to me.
Well, there's a lot of parallels, as we know, between 1 and 2. So they do a lot of callback scenes, even
which I enjoyed. It's a gimmick, but I enjoyed it.
Old Biff, like there's something very familiar about all this.
Yeah.
A lot of those things, Goldie Wilson and his offspring, you have the guy who does hover conversions is Goldie Wilson's grandson.
Yeah.
Jaws 19, directed by Max Spielberg, which of course is Steven's son.
There is a trailer for Jaws 19, and then it explains all the films before Jaws. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that.
I got 2 words for you. I'm going to send it to you after we do this. It's awesome.
That's great.
Then there's several, there's all kinds of videos on YouTube by idiots just like us that are fans of the films. There's several side-by-side comparisons of various scenes where it's multiple Martys. That's just a lot of fun. But going back to the things that I really enjoyed about Back to the Future 2, the way the future was introduced, I was just on the edge of my seat. So I'm in the flying car in the DeLorean, and then we get down, we're in the alleyway, and for some reason, the fact that it's raining made it more real to me. And Marty looks out into the court square, and he says, "The future, I got to check this out. Just can't wait." And he walks into the court square, and we're right behind him. It's from his point of view.
So I'd like to ask you to revisit that scene at some point. I'd love to be a fly on the wall. And I just want you to look at all the multiple extras everywhere, and then look at all the extras in their costumes. That is what I look at now, since I've seen it so many times.
Yeah.
The courthouse will always be one of the great movie props. I guess you can call it a prop. It's structure. I love it so much. And so to see them having it transformed is a lot of fun, because we have so many different versions. I've heard them talk about it, Gale and Zemeckis, saying we knew we wouldn't get flying cars probably, but there's a lot of things that actually have happened, and that makes it pretty fun. And
the stuff they got wrong is fun. It's enjoyable. Which brings me to, I felt this way as an 8th grader, and I think this is the single biggest mistake they've made with part 2. They left the future too soon. They're in the future. I timed it. They're in the future for about 40 minutes.
Okay.
Then they're in the alternate 1985, which when I'm there, I'm like, get me out of here. There's some parts that I find humorous, like the easy way and other things.
Oh, I got some things about alternate ideas.
Yeah, but the mom with these things, I'm just like, disgusting. The alternate 1985 is about 20 minutes in duration, but it feels like a lot longer. But I wish Back to the Future 2, once they leave the future, I'm wishing they would go back to the future. No pun intended. But even though I do enjoy revisiting 1955, I think that's fun, but I wish that would have been shorter. And I wish that it might have worked to have that at the beginning of 3, where they're in 55 revisiting himself. I thought that would have been a nice kind of the end of the trilogy to kind of mirror back to the first one. But I still think more time in the future.
We do this a lot, and I like it. It's just the idea of like our little alternate universes of what ifs. The alternate 85, Nightmare 85, has, to me, it makes me laugh because they're driving all around. They drop Jennifer off and leave her on the swing like a good boyfriend would, leave her on the swing.
For the second time, Doc Brown has dropped off a high school girl who is unconscious.
Doc Brown is a very middle-aged man who's making very poor decisions. And I mean, really, he makes a lot of dumb
Wait,
choices.
is he a middle-aged man or is he in his
He's
70s?
either 47 or 87, right? So I'm surprised that as they're driving all over Hill Valley in their souped up DeLorean, that they don't notice that anything is awry. Like, this place is a war zone, spray paint and destroyed cars. And it's like it takes them a while to get it. I mean, I understand, like, Marty has to actually break into his house to get it, for Pete's sake. The little video that when Marty goes,
It's fun. It's fun.
The whole thing about how he has parlayed his winnings.
Dilapidated courthouse. I love his delivery, the voiceover guy.
There's one other that Biff does, which is on the video. It's oh yeah, that voiceover guy is great. Biff's like, I just want to say one thing. God bless America. And he has Biffco. So
Biffco.
Biff, whatever Biffco is. So all those, it's tough for him for Marty to get back to 1955. It's a rough go. The easy way. And then the last thing I'll say before I throw it to you is that Marty grabs a pack of matches, like the well-timed matches. And I think just in general, that is a note for life. If you ever just see a pack of matches anywhere, take them, because you never know when you're going to really, really need them.
And travel back in time and know if the future has been corrected.
That's right.
All through the alternate 85, Biff comes in. You're supposed to be in Switzerland. So Marty's supposed to be in Switzerland. Doc Brown has been committed. Mm-hmm. So is there a Doc Brown that's committed that's in an insane asylum in Hill Valley?
I hope so.
Is Marty in Switzerland? And if not, did they like suddenly vanish and go back how does that work?
Oh man. The answer is I have no idea, but let's just say for the sake of our purposes here, sure.
When Marty is running from the henchmen in the bad 1985, remember how there's that staircase where one is going, he's able to leap over and hide. I've never seen staircases like that.
That was a nice, I think we'd all like to do that. I think that they built those specially for our star, so he could jump back over and then have Biff, see the door close behind him. So you get the roof showdown. Yeah. Which I think, I feel like if Biff was really on his game, he would be able to shoot everybody. He doesn't, he gets bumped, even after he gets bumped in the head with maybe I don't know what happens to his gun, but I think he could have shot everybody and disabled the DeLorean all in one fell swoop if he weren't a bumbling idiot.
Well, I think there's an alternate reality somewhere where Biff Tannen is a stormtrooper because he really cannot shoot anything. And I wish they would have placed that a little better because I feel like they asked a lot of the audience. He really cannot shoot. I wish that was a little more based in reality. But then he's on the rooftop, as you said, a suicide will be nice and neat. And then Marty jumps off the roof, and luckily the DeLorean is there. You're shaking your head. What?
Well, because it looks so ridiculous. He did like a swimmer's, I don't know what it's called. His arms were like flat to his body when he jumped on top of wherever he jumped. It was pretty unbelievable. That's why I'm doing this.
There's a fan theory that there was different times that Marty died, and one of the times was in the alternate 85. He was killed, and then Doc Brown travels back and then catches him on the roof. And then in the tunnel later or earlier in 1955, when he drops the rope for him to get, that's because that's a course correction that apparently he died then too.
That's why people love this movie. They can have so many fun little theories about what happened, what didn't happen, who died, who didn't die. That makes it fun for everybody.
It does, but in the alternate, in the nightmarish 1985, the whole time, I know they're going to get out of it, but I'm just ready to get out of it. Like every time
you don't like 1985 alternate. You don't like.
No, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I absolutely hate it.
Strickland's still very mean. That's somebody you would want on your side, but he's worse with a shotgun. That's just, it's too bad.
The high school burned down. What is it? 6 years ago. It's like there's no high schools, no libraries. No.
Yeah, I mean, what exactly? Because there's like a biker convention going on, but what exactly does when it's daylight? What does alternate 85 really look like?
Everyone's hungover, I guess. We never get to see.
That's true.
But
So we get to the. You want to get to the. So the third act is Marty and Doc in 55,
which is fun. Possibly my favorite scene in Back to the Future 2, which is weird because it's not in the future. But I love the whole exchange with Doc and Marty when they land in 55. Doc, I feel like I was just here. You were, Marty, you were. And then there's that whole exchange. I love the way it's staged. They run back and forth. There are two of me here, and there are two of you here. And they go, the other me, and all of that. Just hilarious, awesome. Just really, really fun and creative.
Money belt, money for all time periods. And then the plan the plan is set for them to get Gray's Sports Almanac that old Biff stole while they were trying to get young Jennifer out of the Hilldale house. I love that Elizabeth Shue's character says, "I'm old, I'm young" at the same time. I'm going back, but I love that. I'm old, I'm young. They pass out at the same time together. And so here we are with Marty trying to get the almanac, and it leads us into basically all the scenes we didn't see from Back to the Future Part 1.
You probably know this already, but the guy that says to Marty in 2015, "I wish I could go back and put money on the Cubbies." I always wonder why that guy is in old man makeup. Well, the reason why is because he's the mechanic in 1955.
That's a beautiful little known trivia nugget. I like that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
He is in some heavy 2015 makeup, right?
Yeah.
Heavy. That's excellent. So to me, this is where I'm finding that as a fan of Part 1, I'm finding that I just want Part 1 when I'm back in 1955 in Part 2. And I'm seeing, because I think the people who really know
Brian, in other words, when we're back in 55, you reminded, this is not the first movie. I want to be in the first movie. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a little unfair. But again, I understand that we have to take it as for face value. But and this sequel has a lot of intricacies, certainly. But because I know Part 1 so well, and again, it's not like I have a photographic memory, but knowing Part 1 as I do, seeing Part 2 in 55, you do see, like you were talking about, some of the people doing side by side comparisons. I started seeing some of the differences and going like, that's a little different. There's just a few things that and then we have the whole Marty is really almost a ghost. I mean, he is not seen so much in 1955 as he sneaks around trying to get that darn book for Biff. He finally is seen and has to kind of get the Deus Ex Machina effect of getting taken away, like you talked about with the rope or whatever. So tell me a little bit, since you're again more of a fan. I'd love to hear more of your take on the ending of Part 2.
What a creative way for Doc to get in touch with Marty is to send Western Union. I mean, talk about on the edge of my seat. You see the headlights, they pull up. I'm like, who the heck is this person? He gets out. They take their time. I forget the actor's name, but
that's Joe Flattery. That's Joe. He was on SCT.
SCT. Yeah, I'm like the SCTV guy.
That guy is reliable and great. Always good.
Basically, Doc Brown, 1955, sends Marty back to the future, and then Marty shows up right after that. I'm back from the future. And there was something about that that was really fun to watch, and then fun to watch again in Part 3. I
just wooed because of the to be concluded. Do they do a be continued or to be
continued after 1 and then to be concluded after 2?
And seeing the Old West stuff at the end of Part 2 was great.
At the beginning of 3, you see part one Marty in the car looking at Doc before he goes through. I wish they would have done that at the end of 2. You just see the car and not the other Marty. I don't know why, but anyway.
Here's a question for you, and I think it just kind of snapped with me. Did Doc do something to the DeLorean? I don't think he did, but he got the flying DeLorean at the end that propelled him to 1885 was struck by lightning, but it was not going 88 miles per hour. So how did the DeLorean actually travel through time? That might be the dorkiest Back to the Future question I've ever asked.
I did read that supposedly they wanted to get Peabody back from 1. Not my pines, why are you? And he goes and sees the aliens and he shoots up, and that's what causes him to mess up the time circuits or whatever.
Oh, interesting. That's I would have liked that. I've never heard that. That's actually great. Any of those callbacks are great. We love Peabody and his brood of the farm kids. So yeah, that's something to think about. I mean,
and that's right there. Sorry to interrupt. That's right there in the whole scene where Marty's looking at the picture. Doc Brown committed. Mm-hmm. Doc Brown commended.
He goes from a straitjacket to shaking people's hands.
Yeah.
So I talked a little bit about the problems at the first. There were the problems. I think it has to do with how I feel about the George McFly character, and then seeing him as I don't know how to say this. It's like, can you take any of the future characters and put them in any other really bigger scenes? Would you take a Marty Jr. and actually have him as a part of the bigger story, or Marlene? What does that look like? And so to me, there's just some missed opportunities, and this is armchair quarterbacking, of course. But I mean, I'm looking at all the other possibilities after Crispin Glover steps away from the project, and go like, what else could they have possibly done to make it so I'm not thinking about those characters because George McFly is missing.
Yeah, I think it would have been fun to have another actor play Marty Jr.
I agree.
Probably take Marlene out. So he named his kids Marty Jr. and Marlene. I mean, but when you think about all the actors around at that time, I mean, Jim Carrey had done a Once Bitten movie, I think, and that movie, Peggy Sue Got Married. He did another time travel movie. Jim Carrey was around there. Ralph Macchio, Eric Stoltz. That would have been interesting.
I mean, gosh, bring him back. So you're throwing out those are some phenomenal, like, again, the what if.
John Cusack. I mean, all kinds of. And then I thought, well, what if Marty Jr. was a rock star? And then 1985, Marty somehow helps him, and then he sees the 2015 Marty that he's not really happy with how things turned out, but then he learns throughout the course of the film that how everything turned out was great.
I'm getting my whiteboard to write all these things down, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it goes like this. Poor Marty Jr., like I said, is a dullard and a dunce, but he's just one note. You would want somebody that could actually carry his own time travel movie. So because we have Marty McFly. Make him the Crispin Glover of part 2. I think so. Something like that. If we're talking about the old what ifs. And really, let's talk about it. I'm going to go back to the beginning, which is, if you don't know that your kids are running with a band of goons headed up by your dad's old nemesis's grandson, Griff, with bionic implants, take a step back and talk to your kids, right? You gotta know your kids. If your high school kid is going to be involved in a robbery, and like think about, like, just those implications, all the horrible things that go wrong with that, and like, just have a seat and let's talk about it. And I think in general, if Doc Brown goes to old Marty 2015 and reasons with him as his old friend to talk to him about what's going down, he doesn't even need Marty McFly 85.
Doc Brown says, I already went further ahead. So that makes it sound like he went to 2015, he saw this, then he traveled further. But then, should there be another Doc Brown around there? Again, I think it should have been the first thing Doc Brown should have done when he arrived is go see Marty.
But some fun ideas and some great production value. I'd say some of the cars, just the little details. I mean, I'm talking about things that don't really matter. I talked about the Air Mag shoes. The jacket was fun. The size adjusting fit.
Apparently, the 2015 Marty is the one that everyone dresses as in any of the Back to the Future conventions. That's the most popular by far. Everyone wants to be, because that's the coolest outfit.
So like the fluorescent like hologram hat. Is that what you mean? Like the hologram hat. You got to get a pair of those Air Mags too. So that's to me I thought you were talking about old 2015 Marty. He has like the double tie, like those. That never caught on.
That would be what I would do.
So that's Back to the Future Part 2. Again 3. They recover. It's how they recover. I mean, Back to the Future Part 2 made a load of money. Now that doesn't make it. Doesn't mean it's the greatest movie ever. I think a lot of people talk about it's always dollars and cents. But that was a huge. It was
the third. 2 was the third top grossing film of '89. But apparently there was a drop off from word of mouth because people were a little upset that it was just kind of a setup for 3, which it kind of was. Apparently there were early drafts where 2 and 3 kind of happened in one film.
All you need is the pink hoverboard, and you are away you go. You just have to get into 2015, grab the hoverboard, and go. If anything, we can talk about it as the weakest entry in the trilogy, and but still, Michael J. Fox is one of the most affable actors and performers. We've talked a lot about him and just what he's done and how great he is and what he meant, like what Back to the Future meant. These movies mean a lot to people. So it also is
and
fun.
Still do. I heard this, and this is. Wait, I missed that last part. What'd you say?
I just slipped. I slipped on my chair here. I did a little slipperoonie. So go ahead. We just keep it in.
Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. You didn't make me slip. Just
or did I?
Old routine slip and fall.
I heard this recently, and I think this is sad. Apparently, he had to reteach himself how to ride a skateboard in 2, even though it was a hoverboard, but he was riding on a skateboard, and he had to like relearn how to do it. And apparently Michael J. Fox wrote later that was the early signs of his condition, which is very sad.
I mean, to me, that's the fighting spirit. This is the kind of guy he is. Family Ties is one of the most popular shows in the 80s. He's third billed. He's kind of unknown. He's done a few things here. I love Midnight Madness, by the way. That's one of my guilty pleasures. Midnight Madness with David.
Guilty pleasures.
And so he's third billing behind Michael Gross or Meredith Baxter Birney, Michael Gross, and then Michael J. Fox. The show explodes. He has this big movie career, but he never once goes to Goldberg and says, I want to be top billed. He stayed third billed for the entire run of Family Ties. And like, that's a story you want to hear, that he's not some egotistical jerk like a lot of these characters.
There you have it. I look forward to talking about 3. And again, when we talk about 3, we'll talk about 2 and 1 and talk about the trilogy as a whole. Favorite scene in Back to the Future 2, Brian?
Ooh, good question. I think that my favorite scene in 2 is 2015. I think you talked about it, but I like Marty being able to look around the future. And Cafe 80s, even though it's totally ridiculous, I like all the little things in Cafe 80s. Like you have the Michael Jackson, Max Headroom style waiters, Ronald Reagan, the waiter, the Pepsi Perfect coming up.
You must try the Asian special. You must try the Asian special. You must all the one is a Pepsi. Love it.
So yeah, that's a tough one. But it's, I guess to me, when I'm thinking about it, is that the parallel from Marty being in 55.
The fun stuff out of the 1955, it was fun with the stage weights, the sandbags that fall, and the Marty McFly from the first film sees them. Michael J. Fox has a lot of fun moments in 55 when he goes back, where he relives these touchy moments with his parents, even though for him it was just a few days ago.
That's right.
I love when he sees himself playing. So he sees himself playing Johnny B. Good, and he goes,
Yeah.
does that kind of smirk, like, not bad.
That's always nice when you can see yourself and give yourself a thumbs up from afar. Alan Silvestri's score will always be something that will keep me in a movie. The same with, I can watch a Star Wars that is not as good as some of my favorites, but listening to the John Williams score is always going to be fun.
Silvestri's score it's fun, it's dramatic. There are times when I feel like, am I inside Doc Brown's brain with this music? Because that's what I feel like is going on. Maybe that's not his intention, but that's kind of what I pulled from it. That's the great thing about music.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that was missing from 2 was a hit. Like, there was no Power of Love. So I thought back to songs that were popular in '89. Everybody's talking all the stuff about me. Maybe that could have been in it. Or Don't Rush Me, I made that mistake before. Remember that?
Yeah. I don't know who that was.
I want to say Taylor Swift, but I know that's not it. Taylor Dane, that's right. I was close.
Yeah, well, you had I Can't Drive 55 by Sammy Hagar, but you're right. There is no
original song.
Right, like you're not saying I got to get the Back to the Future Part 2 tape, right? Because we're getting tapes, and I'm buying a tape.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that you know what would have been nice for them to get Huey Lewis and the News to do their best to write maybe a follow-up. They're never as good. You can always find, I'm trying to think of some examples. Beverly Hills Cop Part 2 tried that,
Get down, take down.
Yeah.
You're busted.
That was a hit for Beverly Hills Cop Part. The soundtrack was better than the movie.
The movie, yeah.
So that maybe, I don't know where Huey Lewis and the News was, but that would have been nice for them to write a follow-up time travel song.
Sure. It would have been awesome.
To rival Power of Love.
In 3, they had ZZ Top, looking high and low, don't know where to go. And then you see them playing the acoustic version, a bluegrass version in the film, which was enjoyable.
And they still spin their guitars, which is phenomenal.
Here's another thing I didn't know until recently, that there's the scene where old Marty is playing the guitar, young Jennifer is sneaking out, and then he's playing the guitar, and then she gives them a take. I couldn't figure out what that was about. But apparently he's playing riffs from The Power of Love. I didn't recognize it, even though I've heard it a million times.
Yeah, well, the Pinheads. He and the Pinheads are playing the non-lyric version. I'm sorry, I'm having the non-lyric version of Power of Love for the talent show or whatever they want to play for, the Battle of the Bands. You gotta
hand it to Jennifer, though. She sees her future self get married in the Chapel of Love. She sees her husband in a really bad light getting fired, yet she still wants to go through with it.
Chapel O Love. Yeah,
Chapel O Love.
There's something to be said for high school sweethearts that it survive a car crash together or whatever they do, survive at the end of part 3. So
Leah Thompson was so awesome in 1, as you recall, her portrayal of the 1955 Lorraine. I hated her portrayal of old Lorraine. I just found it annoying, over the top. I mean,
2015 and Nightmare 85, all of it.
Yeah, but mostly the old Grandma Lorraine.
Oh, Hydrated Pizza Lorraine.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Everybody's version of how you portray a old granny.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you do hey, do a granny voice. Hey, Marty.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
And then talking about,
by the way, she's just wonderful.
Oh, she's awesome. But that was, to me, that was
not your favorite.
Yeah. One last question: how many DeLoreans are in Hill Valley's 1955?
Oh gosh, there's a lot, because there's one buried, right?
Yes, thank you. There's one buried.
Yeah, so you got a buried one. You've got the flying one. You've got the original,
and you've got the Biff one.
You got Mr. Fusion. Yeah,
because there's 4. IMDb, which I love, but IMDb wrote down 3. I'm like, there's not 3, there's 4.
Well, maybe we should send a very
handwritten letter.
Handwritten letter. Send it through the post.
Yes, send it by way.
Send it through Joe Flattery in Western Union.
Thank you. I was just about to go there, but you beat me to it. No. Don't be sorry. I loved it. Well, I'm Candler Bud,
I'm Back to the Future Part 2, Ryan Chapman.
and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
Oh, yeah.